If you're serious about making real change, I'm willing to help. Sarah nodded eagerly. We want to create the Dorothy Williams standard of service. Every employee in every dealership will need to pass this training program, and we'd like to offer you a consulting position to help develop and oversee it. The news cameras captured everything as Sarah outlined the other changes: mandatory monthly diversity and inclusion training for all staff, mystery shoppers from diverse backgrounds to test customer service, a new customer feedback system focused on equal treatment, quarterly reviews of sales patterns to check for discrimination, scholarships for minority students interested in automotive careers. James reviewed the proposed contract on his tablet. "They serious, Mom," he said quietly. "This could help a lot of people." Derry's former students in the crowd began sharing more stories. One woman told how Dorothy had helped her believe in herself when no one else would. A man shared how she had visited his family after his father lost his job bringing groceries and hope. Each story showed that Dorothy had always been about more than just teaching. She had been about changing lives. The young intern who had recorded the original video was still updating social media. The #dignity and respect is now trending nationwide. She announced people are sharing similar stories from dealerships all over the country. "You've started a movement, Ms. Williams." Mayor Thompson stepped forward. "Dorothy, you taught our city another valuable lesson. This is why we're also announcing a citywide review of customer service policies in all luxury retail establishments." As the evening went on, more changes were announced. The dealership would host monthly community meetings about customer service. A scholarship fund would be established in Dorothy's name. A plaque would be installed in the showroom telling her story. The staff would volunteer at local schools to mentor students. Don't Why stood in the middle of it all, straight and dignified in her navy suit and pearls. She hadn't come to the dealership planning to start a movement or create lasting change. She had simply come to buy a car and be treated with respect. But like so many of her best lessons over the years, this one had taken on a life of its own. As she watched Sarah Chen fire up a PowerPoint presentation about the new changes, Dorothy smiled. Sometimes the best teaching moments happened outside the classroom, and this lesson was far from over. 1 month after the incident that changed everything, Dorothy Williams pulled into the parking lot of Hampton Mercedes-Benz, a different dealership across town. This time something was very different. As she stepped out of her old Toyota Camry, a small welcoming committee was waiting for her. Miss Williams called out Lisa Jackson, the dealership's first black female sales manager. "We've been expecting you." Lisa had specifically requested to handle Derry's purchase. After following her story, behind her stood several staff members, all wearing pins that read "Dignity and Respect." The Dorothy Williams standard. The showroom sparkled just like the first one hat, but the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. On one wall hung a large photograph of Dorothy teaching mathematics in 1963, standing proudly in front of her first integrated classroom. The dealership had requested permission to display it as inspiration for their staff. "Your E-Class is ready," Lisa said warmly, leading Dorothy to a beautiful silver Mercedes-Benz that looked exactly like the one she had originally wanted. "We've added every safety feature you requested, and I've personally made sure everything is exactly as you specified." As Dorothy walked around the car, she noticed a group of young salespeople watching from nearby. They weren't staring with suspicion or dismissal like at the other dealership. They were watching with admiration. Many of them had already completed the first round of the new Dorothy Williams standard training program. "Miss Williams," one young salesman called out nervously, "would you mind if we took a picture with you? My mother was actually one of your students in 1975. She's a bank manager now, and she cried when she saw your story on the news." Dorothy smiled warmly. "Of course, young man, but first tell me, what did you learn in the new training program?" The young salesman stood straighter. "We learned that dignity and respect aren't extra features. They come standard with every interaction. We learn to see people for who they are, not who we assume them to be." While Lisa prepared the purchase paperwork, more people arrived at the dealership. Local news cameras were there again, but this time they were recording a victory, not a controversy. Dorothy's son James came to review the contracts, though this time is a proud son rather than a concerned attorney. "Mom," he said, looking over the papers, "everything is perfect. They're even matching the corporate office's donation to your scholarship fund." The scholarship fund had grown beyond anyone's expectations. In just 1 month it had raised enough money to help 10 minority students pursue careers in automotive sales and management. 3 other car companies had started similar programs, not wanting to fall behind the new standard Dorothy had. Inspired, as Dorothy sat in the manager's office signing the final papers, she noticed something that made her smile. On Lisa's desk sat a familiar folder. Was the training manual for the Dorothy Williams standard program. Inside were not just rules about customer service, but real stories from people who had faced discrimination. It had become required reading for every luxury car dealership in the country. Lisa said, following Dorothy's gaze to the manual. Your story changed everything. Last week an 85-year-old woman bought a sports car from us. The week before, a young black entrepreneur bought 3 cars for his company. Nobody blinked. In why, that's your legacy, Miss Williams. Finally the moment arrived. Lisa handed Dorothy the keys to her new Mercedes-Benz E-Class. As she sat in the driver's seat for the first time, Dorothy thought about how this car represented so much more than just a purchase. It represented every student she had taught to believe in themselves, every barrier she had helped break down, and every person who would face fewer obstacles. Because of what had happened, the small crowd applauded as Dorothy started the engine through the windshield. She could see her old Toyota being taken away. She had donated it to a local charity that helped low-income students get to college. Her new car's licensed PL holder dignity and respect every mile, every day. As she drove out of the dealership, Dorothy caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. She saw not just an 80-year-old woman in a luxury car, but a teacher who had never stopped teaching, a fighter who had never stopped fighting, and a champion for change who had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of hope. The silver Mercedes-Benz glided smoothly down the street, carrying not just Dorothy Williams but the dreams and dignity of generations to come.